Thank you for listening to this episode of Lending Thoughts, sponsored by Rocket Pro. Today, I'm joined by Shubha Dasgupta, the CEO of Pineapple Mortgage. We have a great conversation ranging from how his family values shaped his business values. We talk about the importance of helping people and helping the mortgage broker industry as a whole. And we talk about his overall vision for mortgage brokers and how important what we do is to this industry. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks for listening in. Shubha, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, man. It's my honor.
Absolutely. So I always like to start with the same question, which is, can you tell us your life story in 60 seconds or less, please?
How do you tell a life story in 60 seconds, Bekim? But yeah, I'll give it a shot, man. Born and raised in Toronto, two loving first generation immigrant parents came here from India. I was actually raised by my grandmother, as I had two very hardworking parents, and my grandmother lived with me from the time I was born. So I had that very grandmotherly touch for the very large early part of my formidable years. And around the age of 14, she was diagnosed with cancer and passed away, unfortunately, actually in my arms while I held her as she took her last breaths, which was a very pivotal moment in my life and kind of created a flurry of emotion as well as an ability for me to see a little bit clearer into what I wanted to do in the future, which was to help people. And that kind of got me involved into cancer charities and doing a lot of philanthropic work. And it led me to the world of entrepreneurship, where I started my first business at the age of 21, transportation logistics company, sold that business in my mid-20s, started a biodegradable packaging business, which unfortunately came to an untimely end due to another life incident, and then got into the mortgage industry and haven't looked back. Two lovely kids along the way, got married in 2008, been with my wife for a very long time now. What is it? This is our 17th wedding anniversary. We've been together over 20 years. Love biking, love hiking, love running, and I love people.
I mean, that's a way to do it in 60 seconds. Very well done. There's so much to unpack there. Maybe I'll start on the story that you felt like was important, which was your grandmother being a formidable part of your growing up in your life. Now, in some ways, it sounds like you halfway credit a lot of your entrepreneurship journey to the lessons that you learned through your grandmother. Why do you think that is? Do you think that is a part of the grandmother story? Do you think that's a part of the parents' story? Because you said your parents were working a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a part of both stories. But, my grandmother instilled in me many of the values that make me who I am today and taught me many of life's lessons that have gotten me to where I am today. And along the course of my, journey, I'd explored medicine as a possible career path in my early days. And I thought, hey, maybe I want to be a doctor. And after my grandmother passed, and it was right around that time when you kind of got to make that decision of if you're going that way, right at 14, you got to start choosing the courses and really buckle down on school and education and that commitment towards, pursuing that path. I kind of thought to myself in that moment, based on the values that she's instilled in me, what do I want to be a doctor for? And after some self-discovery and reflection, I realized it wasn't about a love of medicine or science, certainly wasn't about the money or the work hours, but it was about my desire to help people, because that's what my grandmother always was. She was she didn't speak English. She came to this country and just every step she turned, she was trying to help somebody, help another immigrant, help, a neighbor, help a student, classmate that I might have had a relationship with. And I realized that you can help people in so many other ways. And that's what kind of led me to business, because if you really think about it, that's what businesses are all about. Businesses are about helping people and fixing problems with solutions, right? So yeah, I do believe that although she's not an entrepreneur and neither one of my parents were, that it was that life lesson of helping that kind of guided me towards entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So why transportation logistics as a starter? You said you got into that when you were 21 years old. Did you
Yeah.
fall into that? Was it a passion?
No, I think everything in life happens by accident for the most part, for me anyways. The same reason why we're all here in the mortgage space is never because we planned for it. It just kind of fell into it by accident. But the same with transportation logistics. So my dad started his career, my dad's an accountant, and he started his career with Sony Music, where he spent basically his life. He spent over 20 years at Sony Music as an accountant. In the 90s, difficult times, difficult economy, change in leadership caused him to lose his job. And the next job he got was with Loomis, the armored car company, but also a very big courier company and transportation company. So he was working there as an accountant. And in the summers, I would go and help out. Summer jobs, I would spend time at Loomis. I was understanding kind of logistics back end. I was working, right at the front level with the drivers and the delivery people. So I got to see it from a lot of different aspects. And I began to really understand the importance of logistics, which I think the whole world takes for granted. I mean, food on our table, goods in our stores, clothes on our back, like it all comes from this world of transportation and logistics. And I thought it was just so interesting and such an impactful way to make a difference in the world and contribute back to the world. So yeah, I kind of fell into it by accident. And, with that entrepreneurial spirit, I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to make it better, and I'm going to improve some of the challenges that I saw along the course of my time working in that industry. And that's how it all started, and started small. We had a couple of trucks and we had a couple of facilities. And so I remember the early days of that business. My partner would drop me off in industrial areas, Toronto, Markham, Richmond Hill areas. And he would just kind of drop me off there, and I would spend the day knocking on bay doors and knocking on companies' doors and saying, hey, do you guys need any help with your transportation logistics? And like every business, people say no more often than they say yes, but it just took that one, right? And that first person that said yes. And we started shipping goods for Zeller's stores across Southern Ontario. And then we got some GM contracts, and we were shipping car parts into Detroit. Then we got this Disney World contract, and we were shipping baked goods into Florida. And then from Florida, we started picking citrus fruit back up and shipping it into Ontario. And then it just kind of turned into something special. And along the course of that, I realized that maybe it was a little too early for me in my life just to be in that business, in that industry. It's a tough place, man. There's a dark side to it. It was just a grind. And I learned that I probably didn't have the level of maturity, experience, or knowledge that I needed to probably get to the next level. So kind of made a wide decision. My partner was much more experienced in it. He had a lot more experience and maturity. So I said, hey, listen, like maybe it's time for me to find another path in my career and try some new things. I'm still in my 20s. And he appreciated that and bought me out. So, made a bit of money along the way, learned a lot of lessons, failed a lot, which is very helpful, and on to the next.
Yeah. So you have a middle in there, and then you find your way into the mortgage business. How did you discover the mortgage business? Where did you start at, and what has it evolved into today?
Like the transportation logistics, by accident, right? So the middle portion was actually very critical to finding my way into the mortgage space. In the middle section, kind of in between that business and getting into the mortgage space, I kind of navigated a few different opportunities, spent some time in London, England, lived there for a little bit, where I learned that business is global and I learned that opportunity is global. But I began to kind of see things, look at things from a different light. And I always used to like to look ahead and, not what did the world need today, but what will the world, or what might the world need tomorrow, or what might people need tomorrow. And that kind of led me to this world of biodegradable packaging back in 2006. And I thought that, hey, you know what, this might be a really cool way to help the world, help Earth. We have this problem, or this potential huge problem coming on the horizon with plastics and packaging. And I wasn't obviously prepared for how big the world of consumerism would become through online. At that time, that wasn't the topic of conversation so much, but the level of biodegradable discussions were just starting to boil to the surface. So I thought, hey, let me get involved in something that I had a passion for. So had a manufacturing process out of India where we're converting a fiber into a 100% sustainable biodegradable packaging product, almost like polypropylene, like a plasticky like material, but it was made out of a natural fiber. Right about the time I was getting ready to sign a distribution deal for North America, my mom got into a life-threatening car accident. And very similar to, how my grandmother's moment was pivotal in my life journey, this moment with my mom was as well. Because I had to make a choice at that time on caring for my mother or caring for my business. And to me, there wasn't really a decision to make. My mom was on life support. I stayed by her bedside for 18 days. We nursed her back to health, incredible hospital and care system here, saved her life. And, we were able to get her back to where she needed to be. And during that time, the opportunity in that business had passed, unfortunately. So when I was looking for the next opportunity, like accidents, I was talking to a family member very shortly after. And he was just asking me, hey, what are you going to do next in your career, in your business, in your life? And I said, I don't know. And he said, hey, you ever thought about the mortgage business? And, my background of education is actually in economics, love real estate, always have as a side passion. Never thought it would become kind of the full-time passion. And I took a look at it and I was like, I can get in love with this and I can change the lives of a lot of people doing this. And it was like a month later I was in, and here we are, man, 17 years later.
Man, when you jump, you leap, eh? You just go right in, you figure it out.
In my life, I don't think there's any other way. I think if you're going to do something, you just go for it, man. And, you're going to learn along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when you say you got into the mortgage business, how did that start? Did you start as a mortgage agent?
Started as a broker, at that time. I wanted to learn. At least one of the lessons that I learned from my time running the transportation logistics business was that coming in with a little knowledge is going to set you back a lot more than coming in with a little more knowledge. So I wanted to make sure that I can come in as knowledgeable as possible. So I took the broker course, which at the time was very robust. It was a year long. We had to do a 2-month internship stint in the middle of that year long full-time course. By the way, it was like a 9 to 5, 16 university credits. It was offered here through Seneca via the University of British Columbia. So we learned a lot. I mean, we learned about real estate law. We learned about fundamentals. We learned about economics. We learned about appraisals. We learned about real estate math and mortgage math, right down to its core. Learned about securitization of loans and how, mortgages are really structured here in Canada. And I thought that knowledge was very helpful to me in the early part of my career until I got into the business. Then I quickly learned that it doesn't matter how much you know when you don't have anyone to share it with. So I learned that all of that technical knowledge that I had gained coming into this industry, which I thought was going to be very helpful and has been throughout various aspects of my career path. But I learned a hard lesson on day one, which is it doesn't matter if there's no one in front of you. So I quickly started to, educate myself on people, sales, marketing, all those things that I had kind of done naturally in other businesses without having fundamental knowledge, but became very well versed in those areas. And now I like to think of myself more as a sales and marketing executive than a mortgage executive.
Yeah, that's really interesting to think about that story that way. There's a lot of talk in our industry these days that, a lot of agents just simply aren't educated enough to be advising consumers. I see those conversations from time to time. And obviously getting a license today is much easier than it was back then. So do you think that we should live in a world where mortgage agents have to spend significantly more time, energy, money to get into the business the way that you did? Or is the most important thing just getting in, starting to talk to people and learning while doing, essentially?
I'll give you a couple different perspectives on it, and then I'll give you my answer. When we started this company, I was like very challenged as to why the regulatory requirements had changed so much. And people were coming into this industry and coming into this business with very little knowledge about both like mortgages and people, like very little knowledge about fundamental mortgage rules and information that they probably need to know in order to help their clients make the best decisions. But also on the flip side, like, inability to communicate and articulate complex information that we work with on a very daily basis. So I was kind of struggling with that. So I did a lot of kind of reflection as to like, why would the industry do this? Like, why would the regulators want to make it easier versus harder? Obviously, I don't have the end answer to this because it wasn't me who made that decision. But when I thought about it, I thought, you know what, look, the country is growing, the economy is growing, and the need for this industry is growing. The need for what we do as mortgage agents, as brokers, as, solution providers to Canadians was growing as our population was, and the need for housing became more required. So I thought to myself, okay, you know what, maybe it's not a bad thing that we have more people in this industry, because these people need to help Canadians. It all came back to helping, right? We need to help Canadians achieve their dreams of homeownership, put a roof over their head, help create that security where they can raise a family, where they can feel safe, where they can build financial wealth through investing in other home buying strategies or other real estate strategies. So then it became, okay, maybe it's justified, but what do we do? Because you do need that knowledge. So then as an industry, we have to get better at raising the bar on internal education and providing the resources and the knowledge to the agents as they're coming in to make sure that the correct information is being articulated. Now, I said I was going to give a couple of different perspectives. The other perspective is, and something I believe very heavily in, is I believe in the gym and I believe in game time. And, I always use the analogy of athletes when I give this example. Athletes don't go into game time not taking that 3-point shot 100 times or not taking that free throw 100 times in the gym. They're in there practicing plays. They're in there practicing what happens in various circumstances and situations. Let's take, for our purposes, call that objection handling maybe. They're going through different scenarios multiple times in the gym before the game ever happens. They're strengthening muscles, they're strengthening endurance, they're watching film. So do we do enough of the gym time? Is then my question in the mortgage industry. Because game time is when there's a client in front of you. You don't have the ability to practice on a client. It's not fair to the client. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to your business. So where is the gym? Is really the question. So the gym could be in the classroom. It could be through more regulatory requirements of education, or it could be on raising the bar of what brokerages and organizations like ours have to do to support the people that, in the end work for them and provide guidance based on the solutions that they have to offer as organizations. So I think one way or another, Bekim, there needs to be a higher bar of education. I'm not certain on whether it needs to be from the regulators forcing it upon people or just raising the bar of what we need to do as leaders in this industry, which is part of the reason why we ended up where we are and big supporters of education here.
So how does Pineapple today, which you're the leader and CEO of, build its business around education, training, coaching? Because it's my understanding that you guys put a lot of effort and energy into a lot of times bringing in agents who are very new to the business and helping them become professional mortgage agents. Obviously, it's not as regulated as it could be, so it falls back on the brokerage. How does Pineapple handle that?
From our perspective, like what we did and what we always ask ourselves is, what is the purpose and what is the intent? Anytime we're going to try to tackle a problem, right? And then you kind of begin to really realize and dive into the core of, what the problem is and how your solutions are going to aid in that problem. So when we asked ourselves purpose and intent, purpose obviously to support the regulatory framework and, let's call it lack of maybe necessary education that a mortgage agent needs to be able to properly serve the needs of Canadians. And the intent is obviously coming back to helping mortgage agents and brokers build more robust, strong businesses, helping mortgage brokers and agents provide more accurate and knowledgeable guidance towards the Canadian consumers. And in the end, helping Canadian consumers achieve their dreams of homeownership while building a stable and strong economic fabric. As we both know, the home buying and real estate market in Canada plays a significant role in the strength of our overall economy. So then when we kind of really realized that, so we began to build it into everything that we did. So, training for us transcends beyond just training, which we have a lot of. We have, live training, we have recorded sessions, we have an LMS platform that we built. I will call that more like fundamental training. But then let's take training a step beyond, right? So, when we built our underwriting department, internal processing, which most brokerages have, training got layered into that, because what we believed was that new mortgage agents coming in that maybe lacked the experience to be able to provide solutions to their clients needed a resource to be able to get that guidance. And then when we built our systems, we built it with visibility so that our agents could see what our underwriters were doing, back and forth conversations with the lenders, document collection with the consumers. So they were seeing, hey, what questions are they asking? What problems are they tackling? Why is this being asked? So they were kind of learning as they were going through the process without impacting the customer in game time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very similar to like marketing. A lot of our marketing communications, and we do a lot of internal marketing on behalf of our agents out to their consumers and provide knowledge and education. But before a marketing communication goes out, we actually educate the agent on that communication. So if we're going to talk about a specific item, let's just say hypothetically we're going to talk about, the role of tariffs on interest rate fluctuation, then we will make sure that our agents are educated on that topic prior to that communication going out, so they have talking points and they have the ability to discuss it when the reaction comes in, right? And the reaction is responses to those emails with questions about that subject matter. So we began to see that training had to transcend just training as a pillar of our company and have an impact or have a touch point in every aspect of everything we did. So that's where we built like agent onboarding. That's where we built succession planning and how to elevate your career to become a team leader, eventually become a broker owner, if that's the succession plan or if that's the path that you're on, how to navigate various aspects from technical to sales and marketing, to maybe even philanthropy, which we actually talk a lot about, giving back to the community and how to serve them, right? So it became this whole robust structure that evolved into every aspect of our business focused on educating, whether large or small, like whether we're teaching you about one thing through an email that's going out or through a whole program, through a 2-hour session, or even a whole path of your career through a 5-week course, right? It just became a part of who we are, is the short answer.
Yeah. I'm curious of how much of what you are today was part of the original vision versus how much has been an evolution as you've had to, pivot, adjust, remake ourselves, in this industry. When you think back to the early days of starting Pineapple to where you are now, what do you think was your truest assumption in hindsight? And what do you think was maybe a false assumption in hindsight compared to what you are now?
I think what a lot of people maybe forget or don't think about as often, maybe they don't forget, is that there's more than one right way to get to that destination. If I'm coming to visit you right now, I can take the 401, there might be a truck flipped over, there might be bad weather, and I can detour and I can take a side road. I can stop and wait. I can rest and sleep for the night. Like there's more than one way for me to get to that same destination. And that's what's happened here over, my time at Pineapple. We've come to learn that the goal has always been the same, but the way that we're going to get there has evolved and changed significantly year to year, month to month, sometimes even day to day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the goal has been fundamental, right? We started this business on the premise of we want to give back to the community of mortgage brokering. We want to make sure that we are helping mortgage brokers and agents build strong, successful businesses that they are then in turn to translate to their consumers, and helping consumers build strong, real estate portfolios or real estate journeys. And it started with 3 pillars of support, training, and culture. And today those 3 pillars still live, all rounded out through technology, but they still live very strong. And although maybe not the same road that we had envisioned from day one, maybe not just a straight shot on the 401, but we hit detours, right? We hit obstacles, we hit trucks flipped over, we hit bad weather, we hit flat tires, we ran out of gas, and we just had to find solutions to those problems and realize, hey, if we stay focused on the end goal, which is to uplift our industry, then we'll still be able to get there by taking detours and different routes. So I think that we're right on course to where we had to be, but probably not just on the same road that we thought we would have been.
I like that analogy. I wonder how much of that comes from your background in logistics. I guess part of your journey that, makes folks curious is going public as an organization, which is a rarity in the mortgage world, but you guys did that. Was that a part of the original journey, or was that another one of these sort of detours that helps you get to the eventual destination, and it's just a part of the overall journey and story?
Yeah, that was definitely a detour. It wasn't in the business plan on day one that we said, hey, you know what, let's build a company, grow it to a stage, raise some capital, take it public, IPO, all those kind of things, as some businesses do very successfully. For us, it was more of staying true to our goal. And as we got to a point, and I remember the point, it was in and around 2020, where we had realized, hey, you know what? We're funding just around $1 billion a year in mortgages. We're growing at an incredibly fast rate. We had wonderful user adoption and feedback for the solutions and the tools and the resources that we were providing. We had a great culture, but we were only operational in Ontario at that time. And we said to ourselves, we said, hey, listen, we have something special here. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for us to put our foot to the gas and see if we can accelerate this across Canada and really leave a lasting footprint on the industry and on the market. So that's when we decided, in order for us to do that, we had to raise some capital. We could have continued to go the organic path, which we had done for the first 4 years of the business, completely bootstrapped, completely profitable, and growing at an incredible pace. But we said, well, hey, look, we have a moment in time right now. We have an opportunity where we can accelerate and where we might be able to do something really special that we otherwise would not have been able to do. So we raised our first round of capital, which closed in 2021, 9.3 million. And with that, began to tackle those goals. So we expanded nationally, today represented in every province. We doubled our agent count. Well, actually, we tripled our agent count now since that initial moment. We've almost tripled our funded volume. So we started to do the things that we set out to do. But when we took in that capital, we did realize that when you bring shareholders in and when people invest in your business, you have to give them a clear path, and you have to give them a path of liquidity at some point in time. And going public for us was a couple of different reasons. And I don't know if anybody's ever asked me publicly the reasons, so I appreciate you asking. Part of it was industry related, and part of it was business related. From an industry related perspective, which is very important to me and something that's often not talked about, was that we wanted to elevate this brand of Canadian mortgage broker. We wanted to be able to show the world the impact that mortgage brokers have on Canadians, not just like a Canadian buying a home and being able to source a proper mortgage rate or the right solution to meet their needs. That for sure. But beyond that, the impact that mortgage brokers play in the overall economic landscape and health of Canada. Like, how impactful are we that we help construction financing and development and people along the journey of their home buying? We help people with refinances and debt consolidations. We help with commercial financing and help funding all of these, now large scale logistics centers like Amazon and other big distribution hubs that have become synonymous with, the landscape of distribution and with, goods and services getting into the hands of Canadians. Well, a lot of it starts right here in this industry. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to elevate what we do as mortgage brokers. I don't think that Canadian mortgage brokers, because we didn't have as much market share as US mortgage brokers or European mortgage brokers or Australian mortgage brokers at that time, we're often an underthought, right? You think of mortgages and you think about the bank, but no, we have an incredibly vibrant community here, and we wanted to showcase that. So that was a big reason why we took this step. We did it on behalf of all of us to be able to raise the brand equity of what we all do as an industry. And the second part of it was business related. The second part of it was, access to public treasuries, access to capital, which helps our business grow, helps our business continue to have, the funding requirements that we need to run, deficit budgets or non-deficit budgets, depending on what our goals are or what our objectives are at that time. It allows our shareholders to have liquidity options. So if you want to invest into the business, you know how you're going to get out versus a private buyout. So there's the business side of it, and then there's the industry side of it. And both of those converged into us making the decision to do it. And we knew we were going to do it with tough times ahead for certain aspects of it, but we knew that certain aspects of it were going to be great. It's a catch-22, right? There's no right decision ever. There's the decision that makes the best sense for you, your organization, and your company. And we felt that that was the right decision for us, and we still do today.
That was going to be my next question, was the hindsight bias around this, which is looking back and, trying to make the decision, was this the right thing to do for you as an organization? So it sounds like you answered that. I do want to ask you, how does being a public company and being a public CEO change the way the company operates? Does it have any effect at all other, than obviously the reporting needs of being such a business? Or is it much the same in terms of the operations and the goals?
I remember when we started this journey to do an IPO, and obviously an IPO involves a lot of external support from bankers and underwriters, like capital market securities underwriters, and lawyers and auditors. There's so many people involved in this process. And one consistent in that journey was that when we met with somebody, they always said, you guys are a private company running as a public business. And, I didn't fully understand what they meant at the time because I've never been a public company executive until now. But I began to learn as I became public. And that was, with openness and transparency and organizational reporting and corporate governance and all of those things that I think all great businesses have, whether by accident or by design. And some of ours was by accident, some of it by design, but we were always running our business with high regard for the people involved in it. So we didn't start the business as Pineapple, but in the early days of our company, we had a saying where, when a mortgage agent and broker entrusts us with something as valuable as their career, we have the responsibility to treat it with the utmost respect. And every single day, we'd all come into work, all of us, myself included, all of our staff, all of our employees, and we would hold ourselves to that standard that we work on behalf of all of these people, hundreds of people that trust us with the greatest gift. This is their career. This is how they pay their bills. This is how they feed their families. And we have a responsibility to treat it with that respect. And that responsibility is what led us to the governance and to the transparency and to the openness, some by accident, some by design, but then led us to the IPO. So short answer to your question is that in some ways, sure, the business has changed, a lot more reporting, a lot more shareholder engagement, different calls for me sometimes throughout the day than what I was used to. But in some ways, the business has just always kind of been running this way, right? Where we just wanted to run a really proper, ethical, organized company.
Mm-hmm. Well said. So there was something you said earlier I want to go back to, which was about elevating the mortgage broker in Canada specifically. And I'm curious, this is something I think about often. I had the privilege of watching that journey transpire throughout the United States. I mean, at one point, mortgage brokers were a huge part of the market. You have the crash, mortgage brokers, a lot of them just, get out of the industry entirely. And then you had the period from roughly, I want to say 2014 to today, where mortgage brokers are thriving over there. You look at Australia, you look at the UK and other countries, and you see what mortgage brokers are able to do. Even in the time that I've been operating in the Canadian market, going back to 2020 now, I think we went from 20% to roughly 40% mortgage broker market share. And that number fluctuates depending on the number of renewals going on at any given time. And of course, rates play a factor. But one thing I've often talked about is we don't have a got milk question mark for Canadian mortgage brokers. Like, there is no true organizational structure, and it feels very siloed in the mortgage broker community. And I don't think the public understands the true value of mortgage brokers. So when you say that, I get excited, but I do also question for myself sometimes, and I want to pose it to you, which is like, how do we measure success outside of mortgage broker market share in this industry for mortgage brokers such that we can elevate the entire broker community?
Such a great way to think about it, right? Because, we often think about like market share or revenue or volume as kind of, the key indicator, right, of success of what anybody does. But as we all know, like there's so many more layers and there's so much more that goes into it. I think one of the things that is often not talked about is, what you just shared about just the elevation of market share. And I know that's not the specific question, but I just want to touch on it quickly. So yeah, we went from 20% to 40%. I think we peaked over 50% at a certain point a couple of years ago. We've kind of dipped back below, but I'm very certain that we will be, in and around that 60, 70% range within the next few years. And I don't know exactly what the next few years means, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, or 5 years, but I think within that next near future, mortgage brokers certainly do have the majority market share. But what does that then mean, right? And what does that mean to what we're talking about? Well, now we're talking about how many Canadian small business owners that are now contributing back to the economy in multiple different ways. So how many mortgage brokers do we know that hire multiple assistants and social media managers and marketing firms and sales managers and, infrastructural support, admin teams, payroll, compliance that are needed to operate these businesses? So now we have small businesses that turn into, employers, and, what were solo entrepreneurs are now funding, tax dollars back into the economy. They're funding other ways of supporting Canadian job growth and other ways of us kind of giving back towards what I referred to as this economic fabric. So I think that's one way of looking at the success of it. I think another way of looking at the success of it is the fundamental impact that we have on the lives of Canadians. And I always talk about my parents as immigrants coming into this country and leaving their homeland in search of better opportunity for us, and the responsibility that we have, that I believe I have as kind of this next generation, first generation born son of immigrants. I believe that if they left everything behind for more opportunity for me, I better see some of that opportunity and kind of do everything I can in my power to achieve that for them, because they sacrificed a lot. The reason I bring that up is how big a part was that dream of home ownership for them, and how big a part was that ability to have a roof, a safe roof. Let me refer to that, actually, a safe roof over their family's head. Because a lot of people that come into this country, which sometimes we take for granted, might have a roof over their head where they come from, but it's not safe for them, or they don't feel it's a place where they feel safe and secure, where they can raise their kids with freedom and expression and happiness and memories and laughter and tears and all of those things that we remember when we think about our time in our homes. I think that's another way to measure success, is like when we look at, my parents that bought their first home in the 80s for less than $100,000 and recently downsized and sold it for over $1 million. That ability for them to find financial success, but not just financial success, they found life success. They raised their kids. My grandmother passed away in that home. That's where I held her in my arms. Like, that was a safe place for her. It's where I learned to ride my bike. It's where I came when I proposed to my wife. It's where my daughter was born when my house was being built and I had nowhere to go. And my parents said, come stay here. My daughter was raised her first year in that house amongst her grandparents. I think there's so many ways for us to think about success in life outside of just dollars and cents and volume and revenue. And I think that's what the mortgage broker industry, for me anyways, needs to elevate, is that impact that we have, the impact on the lives of other brokers, on the lives of our staff, of our employees, of our agents, of Canadians that we impact every single day. And if we take their money aside for a second, I think that we are incredibly successful as an industry in what we achieve and what we accomplish.
That's really well said. And I couldn't agree more when I think about the impact that mortgage brokers have on homeownership as a, you know, child of immigrants myself, being able to own a home in the West and raise a family around that compared to, you know, other parts of the world. It's just an incredible impact that we get to make. So I want to wrap up by just asking you about impact and what you want to build. When you know, jump out of bed every day, and presumably you're somebody who leaps out with a bit of enthusiasm, given how much you talk about helping people and helping the industry as a whole. What do you want your impact to be on this mortgage industry?
So truthfully for me, I have a great admiration for those that came before me. And I think that we are all a product of our predecessors, just as other companies and other individuals and other people have laid groundwork for, companies like ours to be able to thrive and succeed and build off of and improve. What I hope is to leave that same path. I hope to be able to leave something and help others realize that they are the future of this industry and they can pick up where we left off and they can take what we've done and improve upon it and fix it and make it their own. And I think if we all have that natural insight that generations will continue to progress, and our job as an industry today in the generation that we live is to take from our predecessors and give to our successors, then I'd be happy. So that's the impact I want to leave. I want to be able to leave my successors something that they can take and run the ball with and make it their own and make it bigger and better than I could have ever dreamed of and imagined.
Yep, totally get it. We have been passed the torch and we will have to pass that torch. And that's really well said. So thank you for joining me today, Shubha. Keep up the fantastic work with you and your team at Pineapple and keep pushing this industry forward. It's greatly appreciated.
The honor has been mine, man. And, I have great admiration for you and so many other colleagues around this space. So I say the same to you as well as our peers.
Thank you.